My given name is Newton Chukwukadibia. My surname is Jibunoh. I was born on the 1st of January 1938 in Okonkwo, Delta State, Republic of Nigeria. The idea of starting an NGO known as FAID came from my numerous expeditions across the Sahara Desert. The fact that having been one of the few people in the world that has explored the desert so many times, there was that need to begin to carry out a campaign that would stem or stop the encroachment of the Sahara Desert. So the actual name, Fight Against Desert Encroachment, even though it's all about the desert, but it's not limited to the desert. It also has to do with tackling all the other degradations and environmental problems that are associated with desert encroachment.
The Sahara occupies a third of Africa and is the largest desert in the world, and definitely the most active and dangerous.
The Sahara Desert is one of the most uninhabitable places you don't want to be in because of the temperatures that go from 130 to 150 Fahrenheit. That is why many people describe the desert as a forbidden territory.
The past decade has witnessed more than enough mega disasters.
When I first made my expedition in the 60s, the desert occupied just 1/5 of the entire land space of Africa. From 2007, the Sahara Desert now occupies 1/3. The Sahara Desert is the only desert that is still active.
What these nations did is what an individual, Dr. Newton Jibunoh, has started in Nigeria with the Wall of Trees project in conjunction with the Kano State government, the communities, and school children.
The Wall of Trees is mainly planting a line of trees that are likely to stop the desert from encroaching. We have selected between 8 and 10 different tree species, going from neem trees and oranges and mangoes, and also the sunbreakers and energy trees. And what we do with the various communities is we tell them that the mangoes and the juice, when they start fruiting, will be turned into juice, which will belong to them.
While the world is actively planning to prevent or mitigate disaster, Africa and Nigeria are virtually idle.
First of all, we don't have any warning system in Nigeria, but let's assume we do. Let's just assume for one moment that we do have an early warning system, and then something that come off, you see it on the satellite that the eye of storm is moving to the Atlantic, and we're going to have a great flood, and that you need to evacuate the people of Lagos. 15 million people. Tell me, where will you evacuate them to? What do you think will happen? I think the 15 million Nigerians will just stay there and die.
Luckily, there are a good number of ways to mitigate the effects of disasters.
Well, part of the mitigating factors that we need to introduce is what is known all over the world, and that is to replenish the environment. The other part that I talked about is the fact that we need to have an infrastructure that can help us out with evacuation.
The construction of the Trans-Sahara Highway will surely help to tame the desert.
The Trans-Saharan Highway will not just open the continent for the movement of goods and services, it will provide employment for millions of Africans. It will green the area and allow for settlements. It will bring industries, it will help our water situation, and it will stem migration.
Taming the desert is definitely an expensive venture, but lack of fund never kills a passion.
When I first started the campaign, I funded almost 100% of the initiatives on my own personal resources. But over the years, it has gone from 100% to 30 to 40% of my own resources. The remaining 70% comes from starting with Kano State government that gave me the initial funding that I needed to start the pilot project in Kano State, and then some other multinational organizations such as International Energy PLC, ExxonMobil, Suzuki, that gave me the cars that I used in carrying out the expedition, and the British High Commission in Abuja and the American Embassy. We cannot forget Lagos State government, because they are the ones powering this recent initiative, the Desert Warrior Expedition, which they have graciously named after me, known as Newton Jibunoh's Desert Warrior. I'm in my mid-70s. Some of the projects I'm preferring that will tame the Sahara will take somewhere between 50 and 70 years to realize. I know that the Creator, the Almighty God, has been very magnanimous, to me, but I doubt it very much if I will live another 50, 70 years. So after my second expedition, I started a process of passing on the torch to the younger generation. It will help to bring up a group of adventurers that will also help not only to open up the desert. And if we can go on with that, I would be the happiest retiree on earth, because I would have gone away from the scene knowing fully well that the crusade that I started 40 years ago is now in the hands of young men and women that will now carry the torch to the next generation. Where do we go from here? I will stay very little and very late, because as we speak, the havocs are occurring, the degradation is getting worse, the encroachment is happening by the day, and the hunger and health implication that goes with it is happening on all the fronts. I would like to use this medium to appeal to institutions, not just government, to start taking care of their environment and start working with civil society organizations that are giving service is not something any one individual organization or one state government or even the federal government alone can handle, so that we can begin to step up the neglect that we have subjected this planet, particularly our nation, into in the last so many decades. So the time for action is now, before it is too late.